Hey, Clemson family, the temps are warming up in time for this week's Orange Bowl against Tennessee, and we've got updates to the Clemson depth chart ahead of the big game.
I'm Daniel Shirley. We'll also continue to break down the Clemson signing class with Grace Raynor from The Athletic.
A lot of good info from her. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 53 of the Reign Supreme Always podcast. We're glad to be one of your sources for analysis of the Tigers this year and into 2023. Been thousands of you checking us out on the major podcast apps. We appreciate it. And at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Let's get to it. Clemson will be going for its sixth 12-win season in 8 years. Both teams are going to be missing some familiar faces. One of those is Trenton Simpson, who will not be playing at linebacker. He's hurt and he's turning pro. Apparently, he would have played in this game had he been healthy. We're going to see Wade Woodaz get the start there, and he's been solid this year.
I'm really impressed with Woodaz. He had a couple of games where he really stood out and looked like he could be ready to be a star. So he's going to have a much bigger role on the team next year, and that'll start with this game coming up on Friday night. He's had a really good freshman year. I've been impressed with what we've seen from him.
Another guy to watch is listed as a co-starter at safety, but he's played up at that Sam linebacker position, and that's Tyler Venables. He's listed as co-starter with Jalen Phillips back in the secondary. Venables had been injured late in the year, so it's good to see him listed as a co-starter wherever he might chip in on the field. He's a versatile guy. Then you get to defensive end. Justin Maskell is going to be one of the starters there because Clemson will be missing Miles Murphy, who declared for the draft, Xavier Thomas, who's been injured almost all season, and then Kevin Swint, who hit the transfer portal. Also interesting to see the backups listed there. They will be junior Greg Williams and redshirt freshman Cade Denoff.
There's a lot of depth on that defensive line. We've seen that throughout the season when guys have been banged up. Denoff is an interesting one to me because I think we keep waiting for him to take that next step, and he really hasn't gotten that opportunity. Well, here's your opportunity. Let's see what he does with it.
And if Clemson can get pressure out of some three-man fronts, although Simpson would have been a source of putting pressure on the passer, you could see Brzee effectively playing end on a three-man front. We've seen some of that this year. So Wes Goodwin has some options there. We'll just have to wait and see how he feels those matchups favor the Tigers. Then you flip over to offense. The big headline there is the wide receivers, Joseph Ngata, Antonio Williams, Adam Randall. No real surprises there. And then Cole Turner, Brandon Spector, Drew Sweeney backing those three up. Hey, half of those guys are true freshmen. Antonio Williams has been a strong contributor all year. Adam Randall has been targeted in some key situations. And Cole Turner had the breakout game in the ACC title game against North Carolina with the first 100-yard performance from any receiver this year.
Look, he stepped up and had a good game in the ACC championship game. We'll see if he can continue to do that. I thought the rest of the receivers stepped up in that game. Probably their best game of the season as a group. I'd love to see Randall have a big part of the game plan. And then Antonio Williams has just been awesome the whole season.
Hard to know from afar if Randall has his role down right in the offense, but if he is consistently putting himself in the right places at the right times and making the right post-snap reads, I'd have wanted to rest him for a week or maybe two just to help him get healthy, help him give a little rest to that knee that he's been recovering from. I do think that if he is able to get a little healthier thanks to the break, he's got a chance to really stand out in this game because there's just so much talent there. He's got the build for it, and he's got a year under his belt, having been in the spring and then around the program all season long. By the way, backup quarterback will be Hunter Johnson, who kind of had come to Clemson just to be an emergency guy. Now he'll be number 2 on the chart as DJ Uiagalelei has moved into the transfer portal, and we'll get to his choice a little later in the show.
Yeah, let's hope Hunter Johnson doesn't have to play Friday night unless it's in mop-up duty at the end of a blowout win for Clemson. You want to see Cade Klubnik play well in his first start, continue that momentum that he built against North Carolina in the ACC championship game, and played well in this game. And I think he will. Sounds like things have gone well in practice. So let's see how Cade does in this game against the Vols.
Yeah, I hope they've got some play calling that will sort of riff off of what they did against North Carolina. I hope they're not going to go out and try to do the same exact things with Tennessee having several weeks to prepare for what they saw out of Klubnik in that game and how Clemson ran the offense. I'd like to see a stronger running game against Tennessee. I think Georgia showed that they're a little susceptible to that. I mean, it was raining, they had a big lead, and they still were giving up plenty of yardage on the ground to the Bulldogs in the second half of that loss. So hopefully Clemson's got some opportunity there. We saw some two-back set against North Carolina, didn't see a whole lot of fancy stuff out of that necessarily, but you do want to see Clemson shake things up a little bit, not just come out and do the same old, same old. Follow us on social media, by the way, at Clemson Kickoff. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram with that handle. Let's get into the other side of the ball a little bit before we get to our guest. Tennessee will have to start Joe Milton at quarterback with Hendon Hooker still out with an injury. Milton is a transfer from Michigan. He has played some for Tennessee already, as we've discussed. He will also be missing a couple of top targets. Wide receivers Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman have declared for the draft.
Yeah, Tennessee's going to be shorthanded. I don't think you can say that any other way about their offense. I mean, Hendon Hooker is, I thought for the first 2.5 months of the season, he was the story of this college football season. I included him in my Heisman top 3 specifically because of that. I know the end of his season didn't go well, and then obviously he got hurt, but I thought he was enough of the story of that first 2.5 months that he warranted being in the top 3 of the Heisman. This is a big change to go away from him, but this scheme, I think, is the thing. And we'll see just how impressive this scheme is without him playing, because he was the perfect fit for it. Now they're going to have to adjust and see how they can do it. Without him, without those two just insane talents at wide receiver, their offense is going to look different. How different that will be, we'll have to see coming up Friday night.
You know, Clemson faced Iowa State last year without Breece Hall, the running back for the Cyclones, taking the field, although Brock Purdy sure has acquitted himself as a quality quarterback, stepping in for the 49ers this year in the NFL and playing well. Everybody has to deal with this. Clemson's going to take a few hits that way, but also benefit in a few ways. It just makes the matchup that much more captivating, if you ask me. Check out our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. We've got our whole backlog of episodes there. You can check out what we've been saying all year long about the Tigers.
We're joined now by Grace Raynor of theathletic.com, super recruiting reporter and very familiar with Clemson, also several years on the beat with the Tigers. Grace, how you doing during this holiday season? I hope things are kind of starting to mellow out for you a little bit after signing day craziness.
They are, for sure. I'm doing well. I'm excited to chat a little recruiting with y'all, but yes, it feels like the signing day is always so exhausting, but putting it up 4 days before Christmas, I'm not sure how that got on the calendar, but that was rough.
Absolutely. I know you're keeping tabs on things kind of all around the country and around the region. And looking around the ACC, I guess Miami took a couple of late hits on that big class that they were putting together.
Yeah, so Miami had a little bit of drama this week, and as of the time of this recording, it seems like they're still maybe a little bit in limbo. The big news coming out of Miami, of course, is Cormani McClain, the number 2 recruit in the country. He's a 5-star cornerback. He committed to Miami in October. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. It seemed like Florida was the heavy favorite there, but he commits to Miami. And then last week, and Daniel, you and I chatted about this just a little bit at work. Last week, our colleague Manny Navarro covered his state championship game, and Cormani told reporters that his mom had told him that he's not allowed to talk about his recruitment, which I thought was a little weird at the time because he was already committed to Miami. And then come Wednesday, his mom sends out a tweet saying he's not signing on Wednesday. And then there were some reports or some rumors that maybe he would sign Thursday, but the sentiment still being that Miami felt pretty good about it. And then here we are Thursday at 4:00. And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, I don't think he has sent in a letter.
I haven't seen anything on it. So it's been a wild finish, but Miami still had a good class, right? They've got a top 5 class. So even if he doesn't jump on board, they've got a really good class, and looks like maybe the best class in the ACC by the rankings.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, even with or without him, I think that this is a really solid class for Mario Cristobal, especially given the way that their actual season went. I thought what he did on the recruiting trail was really impressive. And yeah, a couple big time offensive linemen that I think are going to make an immediate impact in Francis Mauigoa and Samson Okunlola. I thought those were their 2 biggest gets. But I mean, I can't remember the last time I looked up and someone other than Clemson had the top class in the ACC, and then that someone else being Miami. I mean, it feels like it's definitely fascinating to see that sort of shift.
It's like the 80s all over again. Where
It is. It literally is.
Grace, you mentioned Clemson there. I still think Clemson had a good class. It's hard to think that a class that I think was ranked 11th by the 24/7 ranking was kind of underrated, but it feels like this class is kind of being overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, I think the thing with Clemson, and in the long run, I think this is really good for Clemson, but sometimes I feel like they get a little overshadowed because they almost never have any drama on signing day. And they almost never have any huge commitments on signing day because these guys have been locked in for months. And I think that's kind of what happened with this class is you've got some studs in this class, and you've got obviously Peter Woods is a 5-star from Alabama, Christopher Vizina. But they've just been committed for so long that it was just kind of business as usual on Wednesday. And so there's not a lot of fireworks with them. And so I think that maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I think this is a really solid class. It's a very Dabo Sweeney-esque class, getting a 5-star quarterback. Maybe he's a 4-star now, I'm not sure. But going into Alabama, getting some guys out of there, pulling them from Nick Saban. And then, of course, this D-line, I think, is a really solid group. So it feels like a very Dabo class.
You mentioned the D-line. How good is Peter Woods? What have you seen from him?
Yeah, I mean, just seeing some of those clips on Twitter when I believe it was the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game? Yeah, I mean, just seeing the way that he explodes off the line, his first step, and he's so big already too. I mean, I don't know. I thought in many ways, there were a lot of reports and a lot of sentiments that he was maybe the best, most dominant player in Alabama. I think 24/7 has him as the number 4 player in the state. But anytime Clemson can go in and make some noise there, and anytime they can go in and grab a guy that Nick Saban wants, is a huge win for them. But he just, obviously it's early and we'll need to see what he looks like in the spring, but he has that type of feel, at least from my vantage point of, okay, we might see this kid early.
And you've written a lot about the quarterbacks in this class, obviously with your weekly report for us at The Athletic. What do you think about Vizina? What does he bring to this team and in this program?
Yeah, I think when you look at Vizina, to me, he is the quintessential Clemson quarterback in the sense that I think that he, in addition to being extremely talented, I think he's going to be someone that this class rallies around. And we saw that in a lot of ways where he sort of became the face of recruiting a lot of his teammates. I think he had a funny tweet about, how much work he put in as a recruiter himself.
Right.
I know he was on Tamarian Parker a lot, and I'm pretty sure he went to Peter Woods' commitment ceremony.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so I just think that he's in many ways the glue of this class. Obviously, Clemson is in really good shape with Cade Klubnik presumably being the quarterback of the future. But anytime you've got another top guy coming in, ready to roll and just reload that position, I think is just a really good spot for them to be in.
Now, Grace, a little bit away from Clemson, you've spent a lot of time kind of covering the Deion Sanders Colorado news the last couple of weeks. How interesting has that been for you guys, you and Manny Navarro and David Ubben and all you guys covering it for us at The Athletic?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating. I think that there are a couple of things at play here. Obviously, everyone wants to see what kind of class Deion is going to sign, who he's bringing with him. We were really interested in what the official visits looked like. And I think one of the things that was the most fascinating to me was that for as flashy as Deion's personality is, the official visits were pretty low key. And I think the kids, that really resonated with them. Of course, I say low key. They still had McLarens and Lamborghinis on the field for, for the photo shoots. But I thought it was so fascinating. One of the guys on the trip said it felt they had a dinner right after Jackson State was playing the Celebration Bowl. Deion flew back to Colorado and they had a dinner, and there was a DJ and there were some people dancing. But he was like, it felt like a picnic. It felt like this is something that we would do with our families. It didn't feel like a huge party. And so I thought that was really fascinating because, of course, we're used to seeing Deion with the camera crew and all of his endorsements and all of that stuff. He has a big personality. So I thought that was fascinating. Obviously, they've made a lot of noise in the portal. And then there was a lot of interest in what happened to the kids whose scholarships they did not honor. And I thought the fascinating part about that was that that's not unique to Colorado in the sense that they didn't honor these kids' scholarships. But what was unique in this situation was Rick George, the athletic director, had told these kids, your scholarships will be honored. And in some cases, he told them that in October. So that was really interesting just to kind of see the moving parts of that as well.
Isn't that on George, though?
I
not
think
Dion?
So. Yeah, I think so. I mean, Dion, the sense that I got from some of the recruits who were not honored, I don't know that they loved his introductory press conference meeting with the team where he said he was bringing his luggage with him. I think that rubbed at least one of them a little off. But Dion, I think, has just been a little more open and more brash about it. But this happens everywhere where the coaches behind the scenes are having to fill out their class and make those decisions. But yeah, I talked to a Power 5 recruiting coordinator who said that he had never heard of an AD getting involved in that capacity like Rick George did, and that was something that would be completely foreign to him.
Yeah, I thought that's a mistake by Rick George. Look, I mean, you in a perfect world, yeah, they all get honored, but we know that's not reality. That happens every time there's a coaching change.
For sure. And a lot of times, especially with the early signing period now, it's a mad scramble, right? I mean, it's just, you've got almost no time to put your class together. You're trying to figure out what to do. So I think Dion was a little more vocal about it, being like, hey, hit the portal so I can bring my kids in. But I don't think that's necessarily unique to him.
What was the craziest story you think of this week? Was it Peyton Bowen? Was there something else that you heard about?
Man, I think Peyton Bowen's got to be up there. Yeah. In fact, I just looked down at my phone. The Athletic sent out a push notification like 5 minutes ago. Was that you, Daniel? Did you send that out?
No, I did not send that.
Yeah, I thought that one was wild. I mean, here's a guy who's committed to Notre Dame, but there was always some rumblings that he was maybe going to flip, and the general sentiment was that he was going to flip to Oklahoma. He's high school teammates with Jackson Arnold, the 5-star Oklahoma quarterback signee now, and Jackson had been very vocal about trying to get him to come on board. And then yesterday in Peyton's ceremony, he jokingly puts on the Notre Dame hat and then like shakes his head, starts laughing, takes it off and puts on the Oregon hat. And everyone's like, okay. And Oregon, of course, we've now seen, they just had a wild day. I mean, the number of kids they flipped and landed at the last second was remarkable. But then he didn't sign his paper. And so everyone's kind of like, all right, what's happening? Is he going to sign it? And then today, maybe getting less likely that he's going to sign with Oregon or Notre Dame. And then he does sign with Oklahoma, and Brent Venables sends out this, what I thought was incredible cryptic tweet with this poker chip and a picture of a signed piece of paper, but no one's name on it. I don't know. The whole thing was wild, but he is officially an Oklahoma Sooner in what I think was a crazy 26 hours.
Yeah, it's been a crazy day at some places. You mentioned no drama for Clemson. That seems to be when they have their best stuff, right? I mean, they've gone well with having no drama on signing day.
I think so, for sure. And I think a lot of that is a testament to, and Dabo Sweeney's been very vocal about this, they don't recruit like everyone else does. And they have their own philosophies and their own methods, and it's not for everyone. And Clemson's been very upfront about that as well. Hey, we know that this is not a place that's for everyone, but if it is for you, this is how this goes. And by and large, when they offer you a scholarship, that's going to be something that they're going to honor, and you can commit and take it, which is not always the case in college football. And I think that limits their drama, is that they're very upfront on the front end. And when these kids commit, they know they've got a spot. And then Dabo in return asks them to kind of shut it down and not take any more visits anywhere else. And both parties agreed to that. And then signing day is pretty chill for them. I think they had them all in by like 9:30 yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel. I think you texted me like 10 a.m. and you're like, Clemson's done.
Yeah, they were done. I told Bill I was a little nervous about Peter Woods just because he was the big name in the class. But
sure.
And there were rumors, I guess, as soon as he committed that he was going to flip to Alabama. But he never seemed to waver, did he?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was fascinating too, and maybe it's because it's fresh on my mind, but I was talking with Trevor Lawrence, his high school coach, a few weeks ago for a story, and he was talking about how these big-named coaches are going to always continue to try to shoot their shot at the last second. And so I don't I'm not surprised if assuming Alabama tried to stay in it. That doesn't surprise me, especially a kid in their backyard. But yeah, I mean, his paperwork was in yesterday morning. I thought that was a huge get for Nick Eason and just really validated that was a really smart hire by Dabo. I was curious, you know, and I thought if anyone was going to be able to flip him, I did think it would be Bama, but here we are.
I heard at least one Clemson signee talk about the fact that Dabo Swinney handles the transfer portal the way he does. As frustrating as it can be to fans, from him as a recruit, he really appreciated that, and it was a big selling point for him to come to Clemson. Is there more of that out there? We've kind of heard maybe not really, but what do you hear along those lines?
Yeah, I think, was that D. Creighton who said that? I think I saw a tweet
I think that's
about
right,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty with these recruits specifically about that topic, but it doesn't surprise me that he said that, because I think in many ways, Dabo's always been very vocal about how he will use the portal to supplement his roster and not to build it. And of course, he's been under a ton of scrutiny, and I think there have been some cases where he should have been more aggressive in the portal. But at the end of the day, I think his locker room really resonates with that. These kids understand or seem to think that when they come into Clemson, they're going to have to compete with each other for sure, but it's not a situation where he's immediately going to the portal to bring in new guys to compete with them up front. So I think we can go back and forth on Dabo's philosophy on the portal and whether or not it is sustainable, whether or not it's right, whether or not it's what fans want to see. But when you hear a recruit say that, I think that at least counts for something.
Excellent. Well, we always love to get some outside perspective, and yours is very valuable, Grace. Appreciate you joining us on a busy week. Grace Raynor from theathletic.com. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me, and happy holidays to you and your families.
Be sure to follow us on the major podcast apps and subscribe to us on YouTube at Clemson Kickoff on YouTube. Couple more quick news nuggets before we get going here. Jordan McFadden, offensive lineman, and Davis Allen, the tight end, both are going to the NFL, but they will be playing in the bowl game.
I think we expected both of those, right? But it's a good thing that they're playing in the bowl game. That's awesome that they're going to try to go out with one more win, go out with one more good performance. I think that says a lot about them. I think it says a lot about the culture. We hear that word a lot, the culture of this program, that these guys want to play their last game with their teammates before they head off to be professionals. And I think they're both going to be good pros, but it'll be good to see them play one more time for the Tigers.
Absolutely. And Davis Allen, of course, still the primary blocking tight end. That's going to make a big difference if Clemson does try to run the ball quite a bit against the Vols. Brennan Stoll could use another year to bulk up a little bit, as could Josh Sapp and a couple of the other guys there. And then some transfer portal destinations from guys who are now former Tigers. Good to see DJ Uiagalelei find a quality landing spot at Oregon State in the Pac-12, kind of near his brother who committed to Oregon. And then Dakari Collins, we hadn't mentioned this one, but it's a little bit older, but we want to make sure we get it on the record. The wide receiver transfer who declared very early in the year for the portal has chosen NC State right up the road in the ACC.
Yeah, you kind of almost forgot about Dakari, right? Because he had committed to the portal so long ago, but it's good to see him find a spot. I'm really happy for DJ. I hope DJ plays well. I think Oregon State might become one of my favorite teams next year because you want him to do well after what he accomplished at Clemson and also what he went through at Clemson. I mean, it's been an up and down couple of years for him as the starter, but he did lead this team to a lot of wins. As Dabo said, they wouldn't have won the division without him, and you hope he does well coming up with the Beavers next year.
I think Dakari Collins really could have had a big year here at Clemson had he stayed, had he played all along. A lot of injuries took place in front of him on the depth chart. Decided instead to take that year off, and he will be joining Dave Doran and several quarterback candidates there with the departure of Devin Leary, but several guys who won games after Leary was injured. So quite an opportunity for him. Could end up burning Clemson that he'll be that nearby. And by the way, I did do a quick map check. Only an hour apart, Corvallis and Eugene for DJ and Mateo Uiagalelei. So hopefully, despite the strong rivalry between those two teams, maybe they'll be able to see each other a little more often than they have the last several years.
And it's good for their family, right? I mean, they've got plenty of family on the West Coast, and that'll be a lot more convenient for them to get to games. And I'm sure that game at the end of the year will be a lot of fun when those two teams face off.
Well, we will get you caught up after Friday's big game against NC State on the hardwood. Well, yeah, but also after the big bowl game in Miami against Tennessee. I can't wait to be there. It's going to be, I think, a very close matchup. Two quality teams, a surprise bounce back season for Tennessee, and Clemson also improving over last season. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. ClemsonKickoff.com is our homepage. All our back episodes are there. Twitter and Instagram at Clemson Kickoff. We can keep you posted on news between episodes, and definitely hit that subscribe button, that like button, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. And we're on all the major podcast apps as well. Until the next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.